Hello, grade 7s. I'm going to be going over section 7.4 from your math textbook on applications of averages. You will want to have a piece of paper and a pencil and probably a calculator so that you can follow along. We're going to start with an example. Here we have a clothing store that sells jeans in various sizes, and we have a list here of the sizes that were sold in one day. The first thing I'm going to have you do is calculate the mean jean size sold. And if you'll recall, to calculate the mean, you add all of the sizes and then you're going to divide by the number of jeans sold. So go ahead and pause the video here for a moment and try that calculation. When you calculated, you should have found that the mean size was approximately 30.7. Let's go ahead now and calculate the median. To calculate the median, what you're going to want to do is order the jeans sold from least size to greatest size and then find the middle number. Okay, if you did that, you should have found that the middle number was 30. Next, we're going to calculate the mode. When we're calculating the mode, we're trying to find the number that occurs most often. And so you will just need to take a look at the numbers and see which one. So take a moment and do that. When you did that, you should have found that for this set of data, there were actually two modes. Both 28 and 30 occurred the same number of times. So both 28 and 30 would be considered a mode. Now, as you've been working through the previous sections, you may have found that there are some types of calculations that seem to represent the data better than others. And so you might be thinking, how do I know which measure of central tendency is going to best describe my data? So if you look at this screen, you'll see a few tips and keys to go with to determine that. So if we look at mean, mean is very useful when the data has no outliers. So if we don't have any numbers that are significantly different from any other numbers, then the mean is going to be useful as an average. The median is going to be more useful if we do have outliers. If we have some numbers that are significantly different, those can throw off the mean, and so median can be more useful. An example would be if you have a student and you're looking at a student's grades, and they have grades that are normally in one range, and then you have one that's really outside of that. It would be better to calculate a median. The mode is again useful when we're just looking for the number that occurs most often. So if you have data that has a lot of identical numbers, that would be useful. An example of that would be if you have a store that is trying to restock the sizes that they sell the most, they would want to know which ones they sell the most of. And so they would be looking for the mode. So let's take a look at a few situations and see if we can decide which one or which measure of central tendency would best describe each situation. So the first one is if we're looking for the most popular hockey team. So in this case, we want to find the number that would occur most often. So if you surveyed a group of people and you wanted to find which was most popular, you would want to find the mode or the number that, or the data that occurs most often. If I'm looking at a set of test scores, I can see here that I have a lot of test scores that are pretty close to each other, but I have this 131, which is significantly lower than the others. And so in this case, I would want to use the median instead of the mean so that this outlier doesn't affect my average. Let's say again, we're looking for the most popular baseball cap size. This is again an example where we are looking for the number that occurs most often. So we would want to use the mode. Typical cost of a video game. In this case, if we were to look for several different prices we could just add those all together and then divide by the number of prices to find your typical mean or average. And that would be a good way to represent that situation. We could do a similar thing with temperature. Now, I think in our measurements of temperature, it would depend on if we had some outliers. If we looked at temperature in St. John's over several different days or several different hours, we could do just a mean or average, but we might want to look for those outliers to see if it would be better to do a median. We're going to take a look at another example. Here we have a bookstore that has books in its young adult section, and in the table over here you can see that there are different prices, and we can see the number of books that have that price. So I'm going to have you pause the video again and take a moment to find the mean, median, and mode prices. To calculate the mean, we can look from the table and see that there are different numbers of books at each price. So if we count the total number of books, we can see that we actually have 15 books total. And so to calculate the mean, we would need to add up all of those different prices. Or we can just multiply each price by the total of number of books at that price and then add up the prices and then divide by the total number. And if you did that calculation, we would see that we end up with a mean price of $14.52. Now for the median, we can see that to find, again, we've got our 15 books. We can order the books from least price to greatest price for each of the 15 books, not just for the 5 prices. We want to use the 15 books. And so if we line up all of those prices, we can see that the median would be the 8th one, because 8 is in the middle of 15, from 1 to 15. So the 8th price is $9.99, and so we can see that the median price is $9.99. To find the mode, we can really just use the table over here, because we can see that both $9.99 and $13.99 both have 5 books that are at that price, and so both of those would be our mode numbers. Okay, so once we have calculated the mean, median, and mode, we can look and see which measure seems to best represent the average price of a young adult book. So let's take a look at each of those and see which one we think worked best. If you'll recall, our mean price was $14.52. We can see that there aren't any books that are at that price, and only 2 of the books cost more than that price, so that's not a very useful number. If we take a look at the mode, recall that we have 2 numbers that are at the mode price. One is $9.99, and that $9.99 was also the same as our median price. But because we have 2, the mode might not be as useful. If we look at our median price of $9.99, we can see that 1/2 of the books cost the median price or less, and 1/2 of the books cost more. So the median price of $9.99 actually represents the best average price for young adult books in this store. The next thing I'm going to have you do is calculate the range of prices. So go ahead and pause the video and take a moment to think about that. Okay, so what you should have done to calculate the range is to subtract the lowest price, which is $8.99, from the highest price, which is $37.99. And so when we do that, we get $29. And so the range of prices in this example is $29. So that concludes our example for how to apply some of these different methods of central tendency and to apply averages. Hopefully you are getting a feel for that. We're going to have you go ahead and complete the problems that are assigned according to your weekly learning plan. Thanks.